Hi, welcome back. New year, new video. I hope everyone is having a very happy and safe New Year's. First video of 2023, I suppose. Why not show some of my plants that are starting off the year better than they were last year? We'll say that. Rehabs that are successfully rehabbing. They're doing the thing. Plants have been struggling, not doing well, lost all their leaves, were on the brink of death, somehow have managed to pull through, and they're putting off new leaves and just kind of, on the up and up, at least from what I can tell is how it appears. Hopefully by the end of this year, they'll be fully rehabs. Anyways, I have a whole slew of plants here, so I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, try to get through it. So let's check them out. I guess we can just go ahead and start out with this little Philodendron Mayoi. I wanted this plant for a while, but they were pretty pricey last year, actually, for mature leaf Mayoi anyways. So I ended up getting, for really cheap, a little starter plant of this. I mean, the leaves were kind of like this. They didn't have a whole lot of shape to them yet. From the jump, this plant struggled. Don't really know why, but it's taken a very long time for this plant to start growing, and it would give me a leaf here and there, but none of them were more mature. Seemed to be going backwards and giving me more juvenile leaves with each new leaf that it did give me. I've had to continuously treat it for spider mites as well. Recently, I noticed it was putting off a new leaf. This was the new leaf before last, and you can see it's pretty funky looking. The shape is just, it's weird. This is probably honestly from spider mites or spider mite treatments. It could be either or a little bit of both. But I noticed the newest leaf that it was putting out looked pretty dang good in comparison to all the previous leaves. So I can finally say for the first time since owning this plant that I have like a good leaf on this guy. Very shiny, it's flat, it's not like curled up and wrinkled. And it looks pretty good. It looks pretty nice. It looks like we're starting off on a good foot this year. We actually have another new leaf coming in right behind it. That's an amazing sign because, as I said, this plant was not growing. I've just really struggled with it for some reason. I mean, I've tried everything. It finally seems to be somewhat happy where it's at. So 2 leaves in the same month. I consider that a win. Philodendron Mayoi looks like maybe it's finally gonna turn into a real plant and cut me some slack, you guys. Oh my gosh, the struggle this plant has been. I mean, I wish I could just put like a 30-second flash on the screen of my time with this plant and all of the issues that I have had. I'm pretty positive this is Philodendron Glorious. I've had this plant for years, you guys. I actually can't remember though. I can't remember if this is Glorious or Gloriosum. I have the other one, whichever this is, that's not doing so well. It has one tiny leaf like this and it looks like crap. Pretty sure this is Glorious. It was my first ever introduction to any type of Gloriosum hybrid. I purchased it as a Gloriosum. I later found out it was a Glorious. I'll insert some photos on the screen of what it used to look like a few years ago back at the apartment when it used to be happy. It used to have really beautiful large leaves, relatively fast grower. It did well, but this plant has always, as far back as I can remember, always struggled with spider mites. It's just one of those plants. It's a velvet leaf philodendron, go figure. That started our issues. I had a really bad winter one year, my first winter with this plant, where I lost several plants to bacterial issues and spider mites. It was like the first year that spider mites just overtook my entire collection, and it was a lot. It was a mess. If you've been here since the apartment days, you might remember. That was the start of it. I lost all of its leaves. I've just been trying to care for it and get it to come back and do literally anything ever since. So it put out this leaf, honestly, 6 months ago, probably. It looked okay. Like, it's not the best looking leaf, but it was okay. It wasn't curled or brown, crispy, any of that nonsense. Since then, I believe it has tried to put off other leaves. They immediately killed themselves off. They would come in brown and just like all funky, and they had to be removed. So for at least 6 months, this plant has been completely stagnant. It's been in the 1 leaf club until recently. So I've continued watering and fertilizing, and I actually moved this. I moved it a couple of months ago, and to my surprise, I've seen a growth point peeking about, and this is it, this tiny itty bitty little guy. So it's very small, granted, but it's fine. It's not messed up. It's not a dupe. I consider that a win. I consider that a positive thing. Right after it's put that out, check it out. we have another leaf coming in strong right behind it, and it's still keeping a hold of its last leaves, which is something I've definitely struggled with this guy. I don't know what it is about Gloriosums. Gloriosum and the Glorious both have been very challenging for me, very difficult, slow growers, very pest prone, and just kind of honestly a pain in the ass. Just being completely honest. And I always see them in other people's collections, and they're so big and beautiful and velvety and just breathtaking. They're gorgeous. And I'm like, why can I not have that? Here we are. Here we are. So we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath because, like I said, every time it starts to do semi-okay, there's another hiccup that comes along. It is what it is. But it would be nice if I could have a Glorious or a Gloriosum that's, you know, an actual plant doing its thing, living its life, putting off new leaves. This is the Glorious because it has, I can just tell the way that it's growing. The Gloriosum is a crawler. It's a creeper like the pasta xanum. I can tell that it would climb. It's not a creeper. So this is definitely my Philodendron Glorious. It's something. It's progress. Okay, it kind of in the same boat. This is my Philodendron Varicosum, and there's a hair on it. This is another one, you guys. I don't know what it is about Varicosum hybrids that are so much easier for me, but Varicosum and Gloriosum are just like my strugglers. I've had a couple of these. I've had a more established Varicosum, I believe it was this one, that was climbing and had some really beautiful leaves, and you know, it seemed to be doing well, and then it's just like spider mites. Once the spider mites attack them and I have to treat them, that seems to really throw a wrench in the progress that I'm getting on these plants. Like, it just seems to make everything go downhill. So I've really struggled, but I find the Philodendron Varicosum to be a very beautiful plant. Obviously, like, I would really love to have really nice established one with some really large juicy leaves. They're just so beautiful with that red on the leaves when they're coming in and the velvet texture. They're just gorgeous. So this one was another one last year that I was kind of just like, you know, it's going to make it or it's not. I basically gave up on stressing about it. And after cutting it back and going through so many ups and downs and struggles with this guy, this is what we have currently. So it's kind of odd because the climber, but it's trelling. Like, it's very odd to see. I feel like you don't see trelling Philodendron Varicosum very often. But this is just how it started to grow. It's in this tiny pot in moss. Had to reroot it. Just kind of left it be, and I have it on a little hanging table, just kind of trailing down with my strappy anthuriums. It seems to be doing good. It's growing fast again. You can see here, this is the newest leaf, and if it'll focus, it looks pretty good. It looks all right. The previous leaves are okay. We do have spider mite damage on some of the older leaves, but nothing too crazy. The leaves aren't getting super tiny. They're not getting larger, but they're not, you know, getting smaller. So I've just kind of left it be because this is the best that it's done since I had it. Well, since it looked like an actual plant climbing up a pole, this is the best that it's done. I'm well aware that I do need to do something with it because it's not going to continue doing well trelling because it's not meant to trell. I don't know if I'll cut it or if I'll try to go ahead and put it up a pole when I repot it, probably this spring. I'm not planning on doing any repotting with this one till the spring. And we have a growth plant coming in there. So compared to what it used to look like and all of the struggles that it's went through and the stress that it's put on me, it's doing okay. It's doing all right. And I'm pretty proud of it. So maybe one day, hopefully, I'll have a really big, beautiful Varicosum. But for now, this is what she wants to do. I accept it. It is what it is. It's been all philodendron so far. And I think that says something. All of my rehabs that are doing well are philodendron, not all of them, but for the most part, a lot of them are philodendron, and that just goes to show how resilient they really are. Pretty amazing genus of plants. That's why they're one of my favorites. So this, you guys are going to crap yourself. This is Philodendron Glad Hands. So it's a variety of pedatum, like the really large variety. The leaves get huge. It's incredible. And if you would have seen this plant back in its glory days, after I first got it and rooted it and all of that, you would not believe this is the same plant because it really looks nothing like its mature version. Okay, so I had a really big one. I bought it for a really good price. I mean, it was huge. The stem was super thick and long. It had these massive aerial roots. It was pretty amazing. I got it in a Facebook group. It thrived and did so well. Obviously, it was a cutting, so I had to root it. Like I said, all it had was big aerial roots. So I put it in moss and it just thrived for about a year. It did fantastic, phenomenal. Can't say enough good things about it. Then came the time that I decided to transfer it from sphagnum moss to soil, and that was my biggest mistake. I wished so much that I would have just left it in the moss, but obviously the goal when you're rooting a plant in moss, even if it's doing really well, the goal is to eventually transfer it to soil. Or so that was my thought process behind it. I took it out of the moss. I didn't even mess with the roots too much. I did remove all the moss that I could, but the moss that I couldn't remove, I just kind of left it on there and put it in the soil because I've been told, if you can't get all the sphagnum moss off when you're moving it to soil, it's fine. It'll do fine. It'll break down eventually and it'll be fine. I put it in a very, very airy soil mix, you guys. That's where the issue started. It went downhill. As soon as I removed it from that moss and put it in soil, the roots immediately rotted. All of the leaves dropped. All of its beautiful, large, massive leaves completely dropped. Yeah, it was done. And I knew what the issue was. It's like, okay, I shocked it probably, but also the roots rotted from the moss being on them and then transferring it to soil, which doesn't always happen, but it is a risk I've learned. Chopped it up, put it in water for starters till I got some water roots going, and it took a while. It took a good while to get water roots on these stems. Only 2 out of the, I don't know, 3 or 4 stems that I had chopped up rooted. The other ones rotted in the water, and this is them right here. So once I noticed the water roots and we had a growth point on each stem, that's when I took it out of the water and I put it in sphagnum moss, as we see here. And now this is what we have. So here is one stem. They're both from the same plant though. And here's the other one, which was quite a bit smaller. And both of them are growing really well considering. So new leaf, new leaf. There's another one coming in right here. It's doing the little inchworm. And then on the second one, new leaf, new leaf. This was the first new leaf it gave me. And we also have another one coming in. They're growing kind of at the same rate, which is fantastic. So this time I'm like, you know what? I can see that there are some nice roots down in here since just from moving it from water to moss. I really don't want to mess with it. I am going to get it out of here and up pot it come spring. If it can make it until spring, but I honestly am probably going to put it back in moss because I really don't want to deal with the same exact thing that happened last time. This plant seems to really love growing in moss. I fertilized it the same as I do my plants in soil, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it in moss. So yeah, the leaves are very, very tiny because it's starting over. It's just, it hurts my heart from what it did look like to what it looks like now because it was just so incredible. It's an incredible plant. I was scared to death that I was going to lose the plant entirely. Here we are. So I'm proud of it. For now, I'll take what I can get because I really, truly adore this plant. One of my favorite pots. I got this in Washington, D.C., I believe, at a little plant shop. Isn't it so cute? And it has a matching drainage tray, but the drainage tray is a little bit too small for the pot, so it's kind of annoying. You guys, it's one of my favorite plants. I wanted this plant so badly, and I was able to import it from Aeroid Market a couple of years back. I was obsessed with it, right? Well, the struggle happened, of course. This is Philodendron Dark Lord. It's an amazing plant. It's this dark blood red leaf, and it's beautiful. It's a blood color philodendron. These blood red petioles that match these beautiful dark deep green with blood red abaxial side leaves. I noticed a decline when it was in my grow tent and I was dealing with like spider mites, neglect, burnout, all of those types of things. And I was really upset about it. So it ended up losing all of its lower leaves. So obviously I cut it. I cut the top portion that still had a healthy leaf on it. And I threw it in sphagnum moss, and here we are. So even after I put it in the moss, you guys, it's been in here for a long time now. It's still just like struggle. It gave me this leaf, but it's been a minute, I think, and then stagnant. Look at this, beautiful right here. Even when it was putting out this leaf, I remember it was having a really hard time like coming out of the sheath, out of the petiole. It was like inchworming. I was afraid it was going to rip itself. I'm pretty sure I had to help this leaf actually come out so that it didn't rip itself. Yeah, it's been months of just complete stagnation. I noticed it was starting to put this leaf out. I've rearranged a lot of plants. You guys seen a portion of that. That's just one portion. I've been doing this over the last couple of months, just moving plants everywhere to try and get them to be happy. You know, sometimes you gotta do that. You gotta experiment and play around, especially when you have such a lack of light like we do currently. We're gonna buy a house soon, and it's gonna be full of beautiful natural light and big giant windows. You just wait. I moved it after I took my grow tent down. There was a lot of plants that were struggling in my grow tent, let's be real. And look at that. So I have not had to help this new leaf whatsoever. I've seen it starting to come in, and it has pushed up out of that petiole beautifully. It's so nice. And there's no rips, no tears, no issues. It looks normal and healthy, which is a very good sign because, yeah, I was just putting off these wrinkly, the leaves that it was giving me were terrible because it is in moss and it's going to dry out quicker than a lot of other plants in soil specifically. So I've been sure to keep up with the watering on this plant and many others once I seen that new leaf, because that definitely, it has a lot to do with how those new leaves come in and unfurl and what they're going to look like and all of that jazz. So this is the payoff, I guess. I've been really patient. I absolutely refused to lose this plant. It had gotten so big and beautiful when it started the decline. The heart was shattered. It looks perfect. So when the new leaves come in, this is what they look like, obviously. And then they turn more dark over time, like many new leaves do. I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy about it. I'm not sure if there's another growth point down in there yet, because you guys know with a lot of philodendron, that's a thing. They'll like push out a new leaf, and before it even unfurls, there's already another growth point making its way up out. I'm going to take this as a very positive sign. I haven't checked in on the roots or anything since I put it in this moss, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's rooting and doing well down under the surface. Huge wish list plant. Really happy about this. They're literally all philodendron. I don't know, guys. I guess that's just the most resilient plant. Everything else, when it starts to die and like loses all of its foliage, it's done. But philodendron, tough cookies they are. This, you guys, this might make y'all surprised too. This is Philodendron Lynnae. This was a plant that I had purchased from Equigenera. I was purchasing some other plants, and this one I just kind of threw it on there because it was really inexpensive. I was immediately obsessed with it straight out the box. I loved it. I didn't know I would, but it has these super large, elongated leaves, and this does not do this plant justice. I mean, it's gorgeous when it's happy. Spider mites, grow tent, there you go, happened. And I mean, I've seen it happening, but I was going through burnout, as with many of these plants that we're looking at today. I was going through burnout, and I seen the leaves, you know, starting at the very bottom, yellowing rapidly, and it just kind of increased, and to the point where I had like a leaf left. And I was like, okay, I gotta do something. So I chopped it. I do still have the base of the plant in there, and it's pushing out a growth point. I don't know how, because I literally have not fooled with it. It might catch some of the drippings of water because it's on a bottom shelf when I water some of the other plants, but I considered that part a lost cause. I was going to throw it out, but it's growing back somehow. I cut the top cutting and I put it in moss. Took a little bit. This oldest leaf has curled up, and this is not a great representation of what this plant looks like. I promise you. Oh, they're so pretty. So it's in moss. It's rooting. I see some nice roots down in there. I don't know if y'all are going to be able to see because oversaturation is a thing. But it does have some roots down in there. It's doing well. It looks like it's rooted up real nice. It's putting out a new leaf. And I was actually shocked when I seen this because, you know, whenever you cut plants back and you're starting them over, typically the first new leaf that it gives you is going to be really small. It's not going to be like this big, large, beautiful leaf, even if it's been putting out large leaves previously to it becoming sick. So I was shook. I'm still shook at how large the first new leaf is that it's giving me since I chopped it. But yeah, it's like the same size as the previous leaves, which is pretty amazing. It's getting ready to unfurl this beautiful leaf. I need to water it. It's taking its time unfurling it. That's probably why it needs watered more. This is what I was talking about with philodendron, how much of the time, whenever they're unfurling a new leaf, they already have another one coming in behind it. Like, look, that one's coming right up on out of that sheath. Can't wait to get it grown back out again, back on a pole, climbing, doing its thing. But here's Philodendron Lynnae. I mean, I might as well just title this Philodendron Rehabs because it's, it's all philodendrons. I do have one coming up, maybe two that's not philodendron, but this one, I'm so relieved right now. I'm so relieved. This is a philodendron. It's a Sodoroy. and I can't remember, there's a Sodoroy and there's Sodoroy AFF. Is this the AFF or just regular Sodoroy? I'm having a hard time remembering, but same situation, grow tent, spider mites, neglect, boom, you're left with a naked bare stick. I have several philodendron like this that have done this, and they don't have name tags, and so I wasn't sure what was what. Like, I've forgotten which stump was which. But this one, now I know what it is. It's Philodendron Sodoroy because of that new leaf. So again, stagnant, no new leaves at all. Close to me throwing it out. Like, okay, I don't know what this is exactly, but it's not coming back. Obviously, I should have chopped it because it's put out this beautiful new leaf and it has another growth point in there, but it's bare all the way down. So clearly I'm going to have to do something with this plant. It's not going to just magically start filling out down at the base of the stem, but I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm going to let it continue growing and putting off leaves and like get back on its feet before I try to chop and prop. But eventually I will chop it below the lowest leaf, propagate that, and chop the stem up a bit and try to restart this and see if I can get little baby Sodoroys going. I seen this leaf, I'm like, oh, it's beautiful and it doesn't look too damaged. Look at that beautiful new leaf. Even though it's tiny and it's not perfect, it's still so gorgeous. I love these type of philodendrons with like the silver splotching on the leaves. Gorgeous, fantastic. And we do have another growth point down in this sheath here. So really proud of this plant. I thought it was a goner. I'm also very happy to see what plant this was because I had no idea until that new leaf unfurled, but yeah, hopefully it'll be fine. This has honestly been my first experience with plant burnout. Like, I never really experienced that in the past. So it's been a lesson. We'll leave it at that. Okay, finally, not a philodendron. This is a Calathea Sabrina to be exact. Now, I mislabeled this plant for like the first year or two in my care. I can't even pronounce it, but it was actually labeled as Calathea, the one that starts with a W. It's like Wars, I can't remember how it's even spelled, but that's what it was labeled as. It came from Indonesia. Got it when I lived at the apartment. I already had a Sabrina, which I loved very much, a big, beautiful one. Once we moved here, a lot of my plants hit the decline as well, burnout not included. We moved here, the lighting changed drastically, and so the first year here, I had a lot of hiccups with my plants due to that, plants that were thriving previously. This Sabrina didn't really look as much like a Sabrina because it had these really giant leaves and they were darker than Sabrina, and they also had red abaxial sides, which threw me for a loop. I had many people in the comments over the years tell me, hey, I think that's actually a Sabrina. It just looks different than your Sabrina because different growing conditions from different country, all of that. Now that it's growing back after losing all of its foliage, it definitely looks like a Sabrina. This is what I know as Calathea Sabrina, which I love. It's one of my favorite Calatheas. It's crazy how plants can look so drastically different in their juvenile form versus their mature form. It's really, really interesting to watch and just kind of like experiment with and see. So Calathea Sabrina, I thought this was a goner. It lost all of its leaves. It was nothing but a little stump for like maybe even a year. It was just a stump. It wasn't growing or anything. And so many times it crossed my mind to just like throw it out, get rid of it. It's not coming back. You can get another Calathea Sabrina for like $10, right? It's not that big of a deal. But I really loved the plant and I didn't want to buy a new one. I wanted this one to come back. So I really wanted to baby it and nurture it and get it to come back for me. And you know, Calatheas are a lot more difficult than say a philodendron, obviously, to restart like this. So I had a lot of patience and I just kept watering it and taking care of it, and boom, what do you know? I remember when I had seen the first new leaf in like a year coming in on this plant, and I was shook. Like I was sure it was dead. I was sure of it, but I just couldn't give up on it. A few months later, it's living under a grow light. It gets watered and fertilized regularly, and it's back to being a full plant. The leaves are much smaller than what I was used to on this plant, but that's definitely to be expected. How plants can even survive a year with no leaves, no greenery to soak in light and photosynthesize is beyond me, but it did, and I'm so proud of it, you guys. I'm so proud of it. Okay, I'm just going to throw this one on really quickly because I am proud of it. This is just your standard aloe vera plant. This was my very first ever houseplant that I ever successfully kept alive. I had plants before, houseplants and succulents and different things when I was a kid. I would try to care for them. I always killed them. Even in my adult years, I would get a plant, kill it, didn't know anything about it. I got this plant during a really difficult time in my life many years ago. I managed to keep it alive for an entire year, and it traveled and moved with me, actually from a different state. I bought this in a different state. We were in a different state for a brief period of time. I brought it back home with me. It's moved with us. His name is Big Al. If you've been here a while, you know Big Al. This plant got massive. It was huge. I loved it so much. I use it obviously for burns and injuries and things like that. And I always grew up with big, giant aloe veras in my home. My mom always kept them. So when we first moved here, I made the mistake of putting Big Al outside because I thought that he would enjoy the direct sun. Boy, was I wrong, because it only took one full day in the direct sun. It's really harsh out there. It killed my plant. It was completely brown and dying, and I tried for months. I brought it back in immediately, and I tried for months to save it, and I wasn't getting anywhere with it, but it did have a pup. Okay, it had a pup that was about this size right here, probably a little bit smaller. That was green. And so finally I'm like, okay, this plant's not going to make it. It's dying. I took that pup off of Big Al and I put it in moss, and this is the pup now, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 new pups coming in. Guys, I know it's just an aloe vera plant, but it was my first house plant that started all of this, okay? So you can imagine my despair. You can imagine why I was so upset. So I did lose the rest of the plant, but I was able to take one of Big Al's babies that was attached to him, and here we go. So it's still in moss. I've never rooted aloe in moss either, so that was quite different for me. But it's doing really, really well. Hoping it'll be okay till spring. Then I'm going to take it out and put it in soil, put it in a bigger pot. But I saved Big Al, and I am forever grateful for it. And now I know better. There's not a single plant that can live outside in this direct sunshine. Not a single plant. I have one more plant to show you guys. And this is actually my Philodendron xanum. They're creepers, as y'all may know, as you can see clearly, like Gloriosum. This plant has always done fantastic for me. It has these big, giant, beautiful, luscious, pillowy, heart-shaped leaves. It's incredible. He was huge, doing fantastic, but he was crawling out of his tiny little pot. He didn't have anywhere to go. So I finally found just one of these like rectangular pots. A few months ago, I repotted him into this pot. I was like, oh, he's gonna love it. Freaked out, went into shock, lost every single leaf. And I was like, what? How does this happen? How? And I was left with this big old long chunk here. Anyways, finally, I was scared. I thought I lost this plant, and I was heartbroken because I grew it from a little itty bitty baby into this big giant beast, and heartbroken, absolutely. Anyways, look, you guys, he finally put out a new leaf. I'm so, so happy about it. It looks like it's going to be pretty little in comparison to all of his previous leaves, but again, to be expected. So, Philodendron xanum, just a little update. He's finally growing, putting out a new leaf. It was a big scare for me. Thank you. All right, guys, that is it. I know I have so much footage. This is going to take me forever to edit. I wanted this to be a quick video, but I just had so many plans to share with y'all, so it's kind of impossible. Okay, guys, I'm just trying to do my outro, but my phone storage is full. Let me make it quick. Okay, that's all we have. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching this video. Again, very happy New Year's. I will see you guys in 2023. I hope everyone has had a very safe and lovely holiday and New Year. See you soon. Love you guys. Bye.